Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Blitz, where we try to cover everything that's moving at light speed in AI. I like to say AI kind of ages in dog years. Uh, it's a special time in Indianapolis right now, which is where we're recording from. The NFL Combine is going on. That's always been a big deal, where the teams come and look at scouts and then offer them positions on their teams. Oftentimes they do that at St. Elmo's world famous steakhouse, which I actually worked at in the '90s as a waiter. But it's a thrilling time, and actually this episode is going to have kind of its own combine announcement at the end. But I've got a special guest host, as you can see. Julia will be back next week. I got Oliver Belanger with me. How you doing, Oliver?
Doing great.
You're a New Yorker, right?
Yes, born and raised.
So this isn't cold for you.
No. It's a little brisk out, but it's nice.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's talk about AI a little bit. A lot going on. It's funny because AI does seem to be moving at light speed, and everything that you hear is either one side of the spectrum or another, right? I hear reports coming out of guys like Dario Amodei and even Mustafa Suleyman that say in the next 18 months, all white collar work might be like completely automated by Claude Code and GPT Codex. And then on the other hand, like Gartner comes out with all of these reports that say that 88% of AI initiatives fail in companies. And I just feel like everything is moving so fast. And I think that companies outside of enterprise, for one thing, I don't think small to medium sized businesses, particularly in the Midwest, are diving in head first anyway. But outside of enterprise, I think sometimes that they are approaching it the wrong way. They're kind of trying to take a foundation model and just throw spaghetti at the wall and say, let's do AI, rather than figuring out a problem that they have and saying, where can AI help us with that, or help us solve that? And that's why I kind of brought you on here today, because you have a very particular and near and dear to my heart special AI product. So tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about Citizen AI, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, happy to. Um, so grew up in New York. Got a degree in psychology and computer science. And then spent a little bit of time trying to figure out exactly where I was going. And so I was fortunate enough to find a workforce development program in California, in the Bay Area. Because I grew up in Harlem. I went to school in the Bronx. Um, and so I found this workforce development program that came with free housing um, for a year, that came with subsidized food. And so I was freelancing, which is how I was paying the bills. And that opportunity and those additional resources gave me enough uh, basically gave me enough slack or capital to be able to make this large investment in going through this workforce development program out in California. And so that actually landed me in the Bay Area, um, and landed me in the tech industry. And so from there, I joined a cybersecurity company and was a software dev there for a period of time until eventually I joined Merit as chief of staff, and that's where my co-founder and I got very close, and we did that for 7, 8 years, and then moved on to doing Citizen AI in the early part of last year.
Okay, let's pause for 1 second before we talk about Citizen AI, because we have a very non-techie audience, and you said all that so humbly, but you're talking about a kid from the Bronx who landed a workforce development program in Silicon Valley, probably living with a bunch of other young people who were out in Silicon Valley, right? Like
Well,
that is a way cool experience.
it came, so they were dorms, right? So basically this program, this foundation-backed program had purchased a DeVry campus uh, at the time, and they basically had the dorms that the DeVry had dorms. And so, they were packing us to these dorms, but hey, free rent, not going to argue. But the program was really special. And it came with, these pipelines, these volunteer opportunities at different events. Volunteering is a great way if you're early in your career and you're trying to figure out how to meet people and how to get into different social circles that may end up improving your ranges of opportunities. Volunteering is a great method to do it because every event needs help doing basic things. Everybody always needs bodies, and so and people realize that the way you do one thing is how you do everything. And so if you show up to a volunteer opportunity, um, you know, excited and with the right kind of work ethic, um, you really do get the opportunity then to potentially convert that into other potential opportunities, which sometimes is more volunteer opportunities and sometimes is something more commercial in nature. It's makes me think back to this conversation that's relevant to AI, but that's been happening for a while between like hard skills and durable skills. Durable skills being what have traditionally been called soft skills, and I think especially as AI becomes more and more prominent, those durable skills become much more valuable, as they are the differentiator between people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome advice. And even in the 12-step community, I think when I first entered there, they were like, when you show up, like make coffee, greet people at the door, set up, help tear it out, like just become a useful part of the group, and you will become part of that group's fold so much quicker and so much. But it sounds like you've always had kind of a caregiver's heart, and that brings us to Citizen AI. So tell us about your company now and what you
Yeah.
offer and how that plays in.
Yeah, well, and again, it is certainly close to my heart. So Citizen AI is an AI powered um, benefit navigator, and what that specifically means, it's really to address for the nonprofit market and for nonprofits the problem of wraparound needs. So taking a step back, when someone goes through a program, whether it be a workforce development program, whether it be um, any different variety of different kinds of programs. Maybe it's a career education program like a community college or an Ivy Tech or any of these different sort of um, fairly high commitment, high amount of effort investment programs. They inherently are giving up a large portion of their time. They are allocating, investing a large portion of their time into that. And again, in my own life, I can look at that as when I went to that workforce development program in California, that was a full-time thing. I was there, I was more than full-time. Again, the program was quite unique, but I was there 7 days a week, you know, 10 hours a day. That was the opportunity that I had in front of me. Uh, but that also meant that even though I could physically freelance because I could do it remote, I couldn't keep up with the freelancing and do well by my clients while at the same time going through that program. So I actually had to give up my income to be able to go through that program. And so people that are going through these programs are going through, these pivotal life transitions. They're making an investment of their effort and time into and entrusting that to to oftentimes a nonprofit or something close to it, in order to have a dramatic change in their life trajectory, whether it be getting an associate degree at a community college or whether it's being upskilled through a workforce development program or a variety of different outcomes. The problem is because of that high time investment, oftentimes they are putting themselves in a vulnerable position during that period of time. If they were not already in a vulnerable position, many people are already in a vulnerable position. They're already in, not the most stable of places. So what ends up happening, and I kind of referenced this earlier in the conversation, but if it wasn't for the free dorms, which meant I had a roof over my head, and if it wasn't for some of that subsidized food, some of those situations, I would not have been able to make the I would not have been able to do it. I would have had to have a roof over my head and food on the table, and that would have taken precedence over making a large investment that way into my capacity. So this general problem of life barriers unrelated to the core service that the program is offering is generally referred to as wraparound needs. Um, and in community colleges, in workforce development programs, especially the highest quality ones, not uh, all service providers fall in a normal distribution of quality, but the highest quality programs, um, and most programs. uh, the leading cause of people not finishing, not completing, is rarely the program. It's usually related to these life barriers that people encounter. So taking that example of a community college, if someone is going to community college and their transportation breaks down, their car breaks down, they can't go to school anymore. Now, maybe there's remote classes that are offered and they can kind of handle that. But oftentimes, if they're no longer able to move themselves in an efficient manner, then they start to have a higher likelihood chance of dropping out and abandoning the program. Another example is, let's take someone going through a workforce development program. If they had childcare that was being supplied by a family member, let's say their niece was watching their kid, and their niece now has to go get a job, or needs to, is no longer able for whatever reason to spend that time. Now they no longer have a childcare solution, and they may no longer be able to physically. They may have to make a choice: watch my watch my do I spend time with my kid? Do I watch my kid, make sure they're okay, or do I go make this investment? And those basic needs are always going to take precedence over any investment into the future that we do, because we need a roof overhead and we need food on the table, and that always comes first. Um, and so there's a lot of different ways that people try as individuals to overcome this. Sometimes people go into a mountain of debt to try to be able to balance it all out. Sometimes people try to do a lot of different things. Sometimes people aren't in a position to get debt. Um, so this general problem of how does one overcome these life barriers, when as they go through these programs, is generally known as wraparound needs. So what we have and what we've built is an AI powered benefit navigator that is able to understand a person's needs, understand their circumstances, understand what they may or may not be eligible for, and then through an AI powered chat experience, kind of like a Chat GPT or an Anthropic or any of these different things. Um, Review a verified data set of programs, and then identify the ones that'll be a good match for that individual, and then talk to them. Actually, have a conversation with them about each of those different programs, and help them understand how that program will increase their general stability, and improve their circumstances, and then show them and help them understand kind of the next steps they need to do to go through that program. So the AI is really this wraparound service navigator, that's fully AI powered, and to work in conjunction and working in conjunction with nonprofit customers, it's able to then provide AI case notes. So the AI writes up case notes and is able to provide that to a case manager, or to integrate that into a case management software. That way, the case manager who's working with that individual person going through the program is never left out of the loop. They're part of the conversation, as that's a really important aspect of things, because those case managers um, are acting as change agents. Whether they're called coaches, there's 1,000 different names that these
Sure,
folks
sure.
have, but they're change agents, right, for the person going through the program. One of the hardest things for someone who's even taking that step of going into a program to make that investment into making a strong impact in their life, is just this feeling of, is it going to be worth it? Is this effort? Is this extra work that I'm doing, for myself, for my family, will that actually yield an outcome? Will that actually lead to something positive? Or am I just throwing effort and time into a black hole that will never lead to anything? And so
Yeah, let me
by
jump
having
in here for a minute because
yeah,
a lot of what you're describing, I think, not only is brilliant a lot from the standpoint of helping people who need to navigate wraparound services, but it really kind of speaks to the entire AI adoption as a whole, right? So I think a lot of the question that individuals have in any business is, can I find the bandwidth to learn how to interface with this new tool? And if
Mhm.
I do, is it going to be a good enough return on my time investment or my employees' time investment that it was worth me doing that? Like nobody has time to do more at work. Everybody feels like they have too much
Yeah.
on their plate all the time, right? And I think the chat interface is super helpful for that. I remember just about a year ago
Just about
meeting with a company that had built essentially like a Mind Studio or an N8N, but it was an on-prem. It was in on the devices of the business, right? I try not to get too technical here, but and it was tailored on their data, and then they could build out workflows in there, essentially like your Claude skills are now today, kind of prior pre-Claude skills, right? But I came in as somebody who's like not techie to kind of tell them like how I thought businesses would interface, and there was no chat interface. And I'm like, you've got to have the chat interface, right? Like that to me, in every bit of adoption I've seen, is what makes AI so valuable to non-technical people. And I think of myself as a person in long-term recovery. Like if I could have talked back and forth my phone the way that I talk with Claude or Chat GPT and been like, you know what? I don't have any food right now. Can I go to Food Finders? Is there somewhere else open locally that, is there a
that.
church that has a food pantry? Like it would have been so amazing to have that kind of interface. And I think that is going to be very helpful in the customer, like in customer. But then you also mentioned something which is that whole bandwidth of case managers, social workers, like whatever they're called at the organization. They're basically people who help people in need navigate systems of care, like having those case notes and having that kind of conversation, because most of them don't have the bandwidth for the number of clients that are being put on them. And so on both of those, I think this is where, yes, AI does take a little bit of stepping into a non-comfort zone, right? And it takes a little bit of trial and a little bit of an experimental. I like that childlike mindset. Let's see what this can do. But anyone who I've seen who's actually done that kind of exploration, very rarely are they disappointed. And especially if they have something like what you're offering, which is kind of tailored to a specific use case.
Yeah, and the category we fall under is known as vertical AI. And I think what's really interesting about the moment we're in right now is that the models have progressed beyond our capacity and capability to make them useful. So the model, we're now at a point where before we were doing a lot of engineering to make the model 120 times more useful than it is at baseline, um, or what it's capable of. Today, the models have progressed so far that the baseline packaging that the model comes in is usually only able to tap into 50% or 60%, a portion of the usefulness that the model is capable of doing. And so, really figuring out how you package and all of the software that goes in tandem as part of the packaging of the model is like a really, really important aspect of making that useful. And so with Citizen AI, we've been really, really, it's actually where like the majority of our time goes into, because we want, and what this is being offered to is people who are stressed, people who may not be, at the leading edge of technology adoption. They know how to write, they know how to talk to people, of course, as everyone does. And so making sure that the technology is able to reach them where they are without requiring a tutorial, without requiring any of this bandwidth, right? And so we've built it to be able to just kind of turn on, bring someone on, and they can start working and kind of work really, really quickly and really, really easily, requiring pretty minimal effort, with those case notes then being really critical, because it's a partnership with the case managers. It's a partnership with the coaches, with whoever is there. As again, I was saying before, they're the change agent. They're making the person going through the program, they're helping them realize that they can make these changes in their life. That, and some people just out of the box, some people just know this and are certain, and they're just looking for the resources they need to be able to make that transition. But a lot of people are, building conviction that they can make it through these transitions, that they can make these pivotal changes in their life. And this is where I think case managers are invaluable, because that developing of conviction in oneself and belief and kind of moving forward is something that requires that person to person touch.
Well, I agreed 100%, and I do love that the technology can kinda help track. I mean, like, runners have, like, their running watches forever because it can show them, like, how much they progressed over the last 6 months, so just having something like that, but I just the thing that really excites me, and this is same thing for teachers, like, I honestly feel like a lot of the companies that don't have a full tech team, right, and that are just kind of adopting foundation models and expecting that they just go in there and ask it any question like it's Google and or say, go do this. They don't understand that they have to give it their standard operating procedures or their company policies, like context engineering. Like none of those are words that people who aren't really like on the forefront of wanting to deploy. So a technology like you have that is specific for social services, or again, the sandboxes that education has. I feel really good for teachers that have access to magicschool.ai or school AI, right? So someone else who actually understands how to architect this technology has done that on the back end to create harnesses and guardrails so that the person using the technology, it literally is just like a coworker or a partner or a liaison between the case manager and the person that's navigating the system of care.
Yeah, I mean, getting really particular about the domain, right? To take a step back for a second, there's kind of three kind of levels to AI. There's using the foundational models, and that's kind of just using that chat interface, like you mentioned, and then there's basically almost no context engineering happening there, and that gives you the opportunity to build something really custom for yourself. But then you're taking on the responsibility of one, making it useful, and two, making it accurate. Inherent to the core technology is this concept of hallucinations, is these inaccuracies embedded into how it works. Um, when you're working with, kind of what we're doing as a vertical AI, that company, that organization, that product is taking on ownership of making sure that the model is accurate, is effective, is useful, is engaging. And so it's lifting all of that burden of building custom tooling, all of that for that specific use case. And it's just removing that and packaging it as to make it as easy as possible to work with it. And I'll give you an example here, right? Um, we have a verified data set of programs, meaning that every program in our list is something that we make sure is accurate, it's active, it's real. Um, if you just ask ChatGPT, tell me about this program or that program, it might give you some things that are accurate or real. It might make up some stuff. It might tell you some things that on the surface are accurate, but when you look into the detail, it's actually inaccurate. For example, it might tell you, "Oh, this childcare program is real, does exist, but they actually don't work with children that's in the age range you're looking for." And so the issue
Well,
with
it
all
might
of
get
this is that
lazy too, right? And it might get lazy and not actually do a web search for current and just go based off the training data from when it's a year ago when it was actually pre-trained and then post-trained. And so, yeah, and all that's hard to understand, but it makes a huge difference when you have a company behind it who's actually driving it. I want to ask you an odd question because I know the audience, right? So they're just hearing the news. What are they hearing? They're hearing that Anthropic pissed off the Department of War and you might not be able to use Claude anymore. Listen, don't worry about that, people, because that's Claude is still going to be just fine. But they're also hearing like, well, why don't I just start an OpenClaw account and have it navigate all the resources for me, put it on my, put it on, figure out how to use Slack and some old computer I have and just let it run in the background. And that is so unsafe. Like, talk a little bit about, because I know it's really important, especially in the nonprofit, like the safety and the
yeah.
data privacy and the security that.
Yeah. Well, first off, OpenClaw is an open source project, which means I mean it gives literally no guarantees, right? It is a use at your own risk project. And so OpenClaw is very much oriented around maximizing the amount of power the agent has and has no considerations around safety. So it's kind of like, and I think we talked about this in the past, it's kind of like, you know, driving 300 miles per hour on the highway. If you're a very skilled driver, you might get there faster. You might not get into an accident. For most people, it's probably not the safest and smartest thing to do. Um, and again, it's very powerful. It's a platform that is half finished. Um, that is oriented around giving agents complete and total ability to do whatever they want. So it's removing effectively all safety mechanisms, removing all permission mechanisms, all of that, which of course leads to a significant number of security issues inherently. And there's been a lot of chatter on that in various different forums. Um, and then, may never get finished because he's now joined OpenAI. And as
Yeah.
much as they said they're going to take it over, we'll see what actually happens. So there's two pieces of lack of safety with something like OpenClaw, I'd say. One is they make no guarantees because they're an open source product, which is, entirely you are using someone else's code at your own discretion. And two, um, it is designed for a lack of safety because it is designed to maximally optimize for giving the agent as much capability and power as possible. And so any concept of safety that you want the agent to have, you need to build into it yourself.
Now that
Now that
versus signing up with a company like yours and having an AI software as a service product is going to be
very
night and
different.
day difference.
Very different. I mean, inherently, if you're purchasing a product, there's going to be guarantees involved of some sort, right? There's going to be that company is going to take ownership over certain things inherently, and of course, the product that they're doing is this context engineering of building the functionality into the in tandem with the model and the AI. So you may move. The agent will not be as powerful. And I think there's a good way of looking at it if we take a step back right now, which is where the technology is today generally. You kind of have two patterns that work well for most people. One is a pattern of software that's built along with the model that makes your people with the best judgment for a specific task, for a job, let's say, that really maximizes their ability to produce output. And what that looks like is a lot of training of those individuals, a lot of ongoing training as the tooling changes. Um, and it's really oriented around how do I make this individual be able to produce a lot more output. And so it's in the software development space, it's things like Cursor or Cloud Code. There's a bunch of different ones in different spaces. And these are human in the loop maximization systems that are really about taking your best people and then figuring out the most effective folks with the best judgment and who are most willing and have done the work of training themselves on AI and making them 10 times more effective. You have another pattern that works well, which is taking a really small scope, right? And really figuring out that domain, really figuring out those use cases, really understanding that and building it into the agent, building it into the AI. And then it can run pretty autonomously for, 50%, 60% of cases. It's not 100%. It's not going to do everything in the world. It's not magic, but it can handle a good number of the high volume cases. And so an example of this is CitizenAI, but another example of this is Finn from Intercom, where they have made some like customer support agents and things of that nature. And so that also works and the reason that works is because the scope is kept small enough that you can kind of figure out all of the different use cases and all of the different ways it's supposed to work. And you can build that into the AI. And it fits within its context window, or reasonably so. Um, so those two patterns work. Small scope, more autonomous, high quality product, and um, and human in the loop, enhance the person, lots of training. Those two patterns work. The thing that doesn't work is what's going on with OpenClaw, which is gigantic scope and autonomous.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work today.
Works for
For
Peter
sure.
Steinberger. He's getting paid millions of dollars to work for OpenAI now.
Sure. Well, but let's be really specific there. What's happening there is folks who have significant judgment are taking OpenClaw as a base and building human in the loop systems because they are software developers. And so they're taking OpenClaw and building human in the loop software based off of OpenClaw as a basically platform, as a starting point. And so what they're doing is they're actually building their own custom human in the loop maximization system. Um,
Yes. You know, that brings me to another thought about why to go with a platform specific smaller use case like Citizen or like Link, right? I was just talking to somebody yesterday about the fact that skills now can be downloaded as an MD file, right? So a skill essentially is like something that you do repetitively that like create show notes. I have a Claude skill that creates show notes, right? I can actually download that in Markdown and then I can upload that into a custom GPT, a Gemma. So like you can use them across the board. And then I realized like, but make sure that you're going to the right repository because a lot of these like people who just hear that, so they Google how do I create a skill for this or that, and they're going to an
yeah.
unverified repository and it's full of malware or prompt injections and all like so. That's why I think people need to start with something that's already been designed with a use case in mind and
Mhm.
start to understand exactly how this stuff works and how much it can empower you. And then maybe it'll free you up for enough time that you can take your Mac Mini at home and go play with your Gmail account that doesn't have any proprietary information in it and, figure out how OpenClaw works. Or in my case, I would rather like Claude Code or Claude
Mhm.
Cowork, but that's, that all depends on your level of comfort with exploration and risk.
Yeah. And I think that's right. I mean, you can take a foundational model, right? And I foresee that a lot of large enterprises will do stuff like this, where you take a foundation model and you load up a bunch of cloud skills into it, or you make your own cloud skills. I foresee that IT departments or something similar will have this centralized repository of cloud
Yeah.
skills that they integrate into their model the same way that they manage software today. It's really no different than that pattern that we've seen play out in a thousand different ways that it has before. Um, and I see that for foundational models and human in the loop systems that can expand over time. The nice thing about vertical AI and different use cases like that is they just kind of work out of they mostly work out of the box. They're designed to be as low bandwidth as possible, right? Our goal, with systems like these, our goal is to buy you time, is to give you back time, not take it. And we measure ourselves on the quality of the outcomes and on the amount of time and bandwidth that's created, right? Capacity building, not capacity consuming. Um, so I think, especially if you're on the smaller side, you want a software tool that really does what it says it does, that you can trust. And I think the trust point is actually the hardest piece of all the AI stuff, from two angles. One, it's a new technology. You know, no one's figured it out at all. Anyone who says they've fully figured it out is, probably selling you something. Um, and that means that there's no obvious standards to follow that have been, undoubtedly proven. There's no science. There's a lot of art. There's no science to it yet. Um, and so that means inherently, part of it is needing to trust the technology iteratively. There's another aspect to it too, and that makes it hard to find and identify quality vendors. How do I know that I can trust this vendor versus that vendor, et
Yep.
cetera? So I definitely recommend anyone who's exploring different AI tools do some pilots first, because the other angle of it too is beyond the technology being new, this specific technology is probability based, meaning the same input will lead to a different output. And so that means that to know that it will respond the way you want or the way that's desirable, requires inherently more than one run, right? With traditional software, you try it, it works for your use case. You're like, okay, it works. With AI oriented software, you want to try that 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, a good number of times, because it may work 1 out of 10 times. It may work 8 out of 10 times. It may work 9 out of 10 times. So the 2 points of trust being so important, what makes it really difficult for the software is, 1, you got to trust the providers and they're all new, and that's hard to figure out. And 2, so test, so like do a pilot. And then 2, um, the software itself is inherently, untrustworthy,
Well,
because
and you probably
it
saw
is.
me starting to laugh because not only is it probabilistic, but it sounds like it thinks it knows exactly what it's talking about. It reminds me of my wife. She is right all the time. Well, it doesn't matter what a doctor said or whatever, and she is convicted with the fact that she's right, right? And I love her to death. And most of the time she is more right than I am. But she always feels like she's right. And a lot of times these models will they really the way that they phrase things or the way that they pick up on the vernacular of whatever domain they're speaking in, it sounds like, oh yeah, why would I question that? Like this thing sounds exactly right. So I think you bring up an amazing point there on the whole test and iterate and continue to retest these models.
Yeah, and I
All
think,
right, Oliver. I don't want to keep you all day, man. If people want to like who's your ideal customer? Who should reach out to Citizen AI?
yeah, absolutely. If you're a nonprofit, and you have folks who are, in your population, in your service population, who are struggling with wraparound needs, especially basic needs, and you're in Indiana, we are fully and absolutely, Indiana focused and specific. And while I may be, from New York and from the Bronx, I live in Indianapolis now. I live in Indy. So if you're in Indiana and you have, in your program folks who are struggling with wraparound needs, or you're having case managers that are, just tired, because of the volume of work, we should talk. I think CitizenAI could really help, both the people going through your program and whatever case managers, you have, serving them.
And we'll put your LinkedIn and the website for Citizen. But you got true NFL Combine style. I think you guys have added a teammate since you've come to Indianapolis in the real recent past. Is that not true?
Absolutely, and very excited, to have Jason here, join the team as our director of, growth and partnerships. And again, really excited to continue to, invest and immerse ourselves in Indiana, and do the most good we can.
Yeah, man. And I could not be more thrilled to be working with you and for Citizen AI. And that's not going to stop anything with the podcast. We're still going to have schools out. We'll be back next week. I got a Purdue student coming on, and we'll still be checking in with some weekly updates on the Blitz and all that. But you will see my LinkedIn change here as of tomorrow because I've got a new team I'm a part of, and I'm really excited. And I thank you very much for your time today and for your faith in me.
Yes, sir. Very excited to have you join.
Right on. Have a great Monday, everybody.